Is that 3 minutes mark? Hello and welcome to the 25th CTBT anniversary talk, Hydroacoustics. I am Georgios Charalambous, and together with my co-convener, Peter Nielsen, we are honored and pleased to welcome Dr. Martin Lawrence, truly a piece of CTBT history. Dr. Martin Lawrence was educated at the Universities of Sydney and New South Wales. He undertook research on various aspects of hydroacoustics for the Australian government, including propagation, reflection, and scattering of acoustic energy. Subsequently, he was appointed as scientific advisor for the Royal Australian Navy. During 1994 and 1995, Martin participated in the negotiations of the CTBT at the Conference on Disarmament, which convened periodically in Geneva, Switzerland. He was part of the Australian delegation with the role of providing hydroacoustic advice. The Conference on Disarmament established working teams for its technology to provide a technical proposal for its network. Martin was appointed chairman of the working team on hydroacoustics, which comprised around 20 experts from countries around the world. When the Provisional Technical Secretariat at the CTBTO was established in 1997, he was appointed head of the Hydroacoustics group, which had the responsibility for establishing and setting to work the hydroacoustic network of the International Monitoring System. During the period that he headed this group at CTBTO, 8 out of the 11 hydroacoustic stations of the International Monitoring System were successfully installed. He departed from the CTBTO in 2006. Currently, he lives in Sydney, Australia. He has continued to be involved in various ocean projects, including to improve the temperature regime of the Great Barrier Reef. It is our pleasure to present Dr. Martin Lawrence. Martin, the stage is yours.
Okay, I shall try to chair. Okay, is that worked?
That is okay.
Good. Okay, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are. When I was asked to give this presentation, I decided to try to cover the full life of the hydroacoustic network from when it was first conceptualized through to the present day. While I had close knowledge of what went on in hydroacoustics for test band monitoring negotiations and the first decade of the CTBTO, my detailed knowledge did not include the more recent years. Thus, I needed some help in preparing suitable materials. The current staff of the CTBTO, as listed on this slide, have provided much information about what has happened in these more recent years. I thank them very much for their contributions. This presentation aims to describe all aspects of the hydroacoustic network of the CTBT, dealing with how it was conceived, what it now is, and how it is performing. To achieve this, the structure of the presentation will be as follows. I will begin by providing the historical context around the role of hydroacoustics in test band monitoring discussions. I will include the periods prior to as well as within the CTBT negotiations. Next, I will address the hydroacoustic network of the International Monitoring System of the CTBT. Implementation, challenges, and performance will be the main themes. Finally, I will address how this network of IMS stations forms a unique global observatory, which is valuable not only for test band monitoring, but also for other civil and scientific applications. Now we start the historical review of hydroacoustics and test ban monitoring discussions. Less than a decade after the first nuclear weapon test, discussions began on bans of nuclear test explosions. The Partial Test Ban Treaty of 1963 banned nuclear weapon tests in all environments except underground. There was a lengthy process developing a comprehensive test ban. From the start, there was recognition of the need for a technical monitoring regime. Initial discussions on monitoring in the 1960s and early 1970s were wide-ranging. They included hydroacoustic monitoring stations. The hydroacoustic network proposed was regarded as being perfectly able to handle the role of monitoring the oceans. It included more stations, but simpler stations than we have it in the CTBT International Monitoring System. Seismic monitoring for detection and identification of underground explosions was considered the most problematic. So there was a focus on developing this technology. The group of scientific experts was established in 1996 to progress and validate seismic technology. By the mid-1990s, seismic technologies had improved significantly. Plus, importantly, there was political will to move ahead with a comprehensive test ban treaty. There were preliminary negotiations during 1993 which decided that the CTBT negotiations should formally begin. They began within the Conference on Disarmament in Geneva, Switzerland. 4 monitoring technologies were flagged for greater consideration. 3 were based on wave propagation, seismic, hydroacoustic and infrasound, and the 4th was radionuclide technology. In 1994, the formal CTBT negotiations commenced. These negotiations occurred during 2-week periods separated by a few months. It was quickly established that the above 4 technologies should perform real-time monitoring. After 2 years of strenuous effort, the CTBT treaty text was finalised, leading it to be opened for signature in 1996. Over the next few slides, I shall outline the hydroacoustic part of these negotiations. First, I would like to address the question, why use hydroacoustic monitoring for the CTBT? Historically, nuclear weapon testing has taken place in the ocean. The photograph is from one such test. A comprehensive monitoring regime needs monitoring in all environments. Each of the chosen technologies has some capability in each terrestrial environment. Synergy of the technologies ensures that there is increased difficulty for a potential evader. For example, hydroacoustic technology, as well as covering the oceans, can detect explosions underground and in the atmosphere, provided the distance to the ocean is not great. Further, the hydroacoustic signals are of the highest quality. The hydrophone detectors are extremely sensitive and provide a very clean signal, that is, with a very high signal-to-noise ratio. Thus, they are very capable in terms of discrimination between signals from explosions and from other sources. As well, they can provide very good directional information. Initially, in plenary session of the negotiations, interested states presented their individual visions of a suitable hydroacoustic network. Then, working teams were established to provide a technical model for consideration in plenary session, which would then agree on concepts and draft treaty text. I have a good insight into this process as I was appointed as chairman of the working team for hydroacoustics. Each of these working teams consisted of experts from many countries. For the hydroacoustic network, some decisions were made as shown in this slide. The purpose of the network was for discrimination of events, as well as for use in location of events. Discrimination is basically about recognising explosions from the various other events that can cause signals. The geographic coverage was for all oceans except for the Arctic Ocean, and I will say more about that limitation shortly. 2 alternative types of hydroacoustic station were considered initially. Hydrophones cabled back to shore are indicated in the left figure, we can see hydrophones in the water at depth with a cable going back to a facility on land where the signal is transmitted back to the international data centre. There's an explosion out here providing some noise for the hydrophones to listen to. The prime advantage of such stations is that they send excellent real-time waveform data. The prime disadvantage is that they are very expensive to install. The alternative discussed was to use moored buoys, as in the right figure. Here we have a floating surface buoy on the surface of the water. We have an anchor on the sea floor. We have hydrophones at mid-water depth. And the prime advantage of this type of station is that they would be cheaper to install. A crucial disadvantage is that the waveform data would not be sent, but only characteristics of events with a delay of many hours. Another problem is the limited lifetime of deep water moorings, so there would be a requirement to periodically, maybe annually, replace them. So much cheaper to install, but there would be a significant cost every year. The recommendation for the hydroacoustic network was that the station should be based on hydrophones cabled back to shore, sending real-time data. The network first proposed by the working team involved 20 cabled stations, as shown in this map. However, this was rejected by the plenary due to the anticipated high cost. Note that at this stage of the discussions, monitoring of the Arctic was still under consideration. You can see a station right up at the top of the world. However, it was one of those stations that were deleted to keep the cost down. The rationale included that the seismic coverage of the small Arctic Ocean is quite good. Also, it was anticipated that an Arctic hydrophone station would have been particularly difficult to build due to ice cover. To reduce cost, the hydroacoustic station network was reduced from 20 to 11 stations, all using cabled hydrophones. The number of stations was agreed by the plenary, but the cost had to be reduced further. The next proposal, which was accepted by the plenary, was for 6 cabled hydrophone stations and 5 seismic stations using TFO signals. And I'll say more about those in a moment. Extra auxiliary seismic stations were added to the seismic network to reduce the loss of coverage in the above compromise. This 6+5 solution became the hydroacoustic part of the international monitoring system of the CTBT. The basic specifications and locations of these stations were also agreed. This is the poor quality map that we included in the report of our working team. It shows the locations of each of the 6 hydrophone stations and the 5 TFO stations. The map indicates the use of some existing facilities at 2 of the hydrophone station locations. These so-called MILS stations, Missile Impact Locating Stations, played a useful role in providing the IDC with hydroacoustic data in the very early years before any of the CTBT stations were built. However, they were old stations near the end of their useful life, and being designed for different purposes, they did not meet the CTBT specifications. Some basic specifications that were agreed for the 2 types of hydroacoustic station are shown here. For the hydrophone station, there is more high-frequency information included than for any other IMS station. An explosion in the ocean generates a bubble pulse of gas, which can be used to discriminate from other events. The ocean also transmits these higher frequencies much better than does the Earth or the atmosphere. For TFO stations, or T stations, the frequency range is chosen to be higher than for other seismic stations, again to utilise the higher frequency in the ocean signals. Following the establishment of the CTBTO, the basic specifications of the stations had to become more detailed. Working Group B of the CTBTO had responsibility for this effort. Several hydroacoustic workshops played a role in developing technical advice for Working Group B to consider. Some outcomes of this process were 3 horizontally separated hydrophones, thus achieving directionality from only one hydrophone station. Also, suitable rates were chosen for sampling the signals. Before moving on, I wish to say a brief word on why propagation of underwater sound is so effective. Firstly, due to the profile of sound speed with depth, refraction limits interactions with surfaces, either at the sea surface or sea floor. Here we have a sound speed profile with depth. This is sound speed plotted along this axis and depth down here. And you can see there's a minimum in sound speed, a depth of order of 1,000 meters. In the center here, we have a ray tracing plot, which shows the energy being consistently refracted back towards the axis. Snell's law, which describes angles of refractions, ensures that the waves travel this sort of path. So you have these paths that travel long distances without interacting with the sea floor or the sea surface. That is, the acoustic energy is trapped in a waveguide. The second effect that makes propagation so effective is that absorption of acoustic energy is very low at the frequencies of interest. Propagation is so good that explosions as small as a kilogram or so can be heard right across an ocean. That's a kilogram, which is 1 million times smaller than a kiloton, which is normally used in the context of nuclear explosions. It is the excellent acoustic propagation through the ocean that allows the relatively small number of stations to monitor the oceans of the world. Here we have diagrams to illustrate the operation of each type of hydroacoustic station. The hydrophone station has 3 sensing elements, the hydrophones, supported by buoys which remain subsurface. These are these orange balls. Cables take the signal down from the hydrophones to the trunk cable lying on the sea floor, and from there back to the shore facility. Satellites then take the signal back to the IDC in Vienna. Typically, the hydrophones are at a depth of 1 kilometre and the trunk cables are 100 kilometres long. The hydrophones are placed with a horizontal separation of 2 kilometres. The T-phase station, on the right here, is located on land near the ocean with a steep decline from the land to the water. 2 paths are shown from an underwater explosion. The hydroacoustic path travels mostly through the ocean and is converted to a seismic signal at this steep interface, and it travels a short distance through the land to the seismometer. The seismic only path has a short path through the water and then a long path through the land. Following the establishment of the Provisional Technical Secretariat of the CTBTO in 1997, work commenced on establishing the Hydroacoustic Network of the CTBT. This map of the globe shows the 11 hydroacoustic stations. The T stations are named in the grey boxes. The hydrophone stations are named in the white boxes. Clearly, the hydrophone stations are predominantly in the southern hemisphere, which matches the distribution of oceans around the globe. The table shows the stations listed in chronological order of installation. Dates are listed for installation and for certification of these stations. Certification is a process which looks at all characteristics of a station to ensure that it meets all of the CTBT requirements. The first station was installed in the year 2000. It was HA8 at Diego Garcia, which is located here. The final station was installed in the year 2016. It was HA4 at Crozet Islands here. I was personally involved in this work from the beginning, being appointed as the head of the hydroacoustic group of the IMS division in the first days of the organisation. By the time I left the CTBTO in 2006, 8 of the 11 hydroacoustic stations had been installed. Shortly, I will speak further about HA3, Robinson Crusoe Island, off the coast of Chile, which had to be re-established following a tsunami, and also about HA4, Crusoe Island, the last station to be installed. The depth of the hydrophones is chosen to be near the axis of the SOFAR channel. The depth of this axis depends significantly on the temperature at the sea surface. Where the sea surface is hotter, closer to the equator, the axis depth is greater, such as at HA8 Diego Garcia. Where the sea surface is cooler, far from the equator, the axis depth is less, such as at HA4 Crozet Islands. This figure shows the result of computer modelling of acoustic propagation using the parabolic equation technique. The modelling is performed at low frequency, relevant to the signals expected. The modelling includes propagation results from each of the 6 hydrophone stations, combining them into one figure to provide a map of acoustic coverage. The red colour denotes regions of best coverage, with blue regions showing much greater propagation loss. Potential blockages might occur behind islands or even behind undersea areas of raised seafloor. Whenever the water depth becomes less than the SOFAR axis depth, there will be significant propagation loss. However, these potential blockages are seen to be partially filled in, significantly by the overlap from different stations, but also from diffraction of the acoustic waves. Thanks to Kevin Heaney and colleagues for this modelling result. The hydrophone stations are designed to operate for many years without any maintenance of the underwater part. The station specifications call for a design life in excess of 20 years, but things can go wrong, necessitating rebuilding the station. In February 2010, there was a large earthquake off the coast of Chile, near the city of Concepcion. On the map, the earthquake is located at the centre of the circles. HA3 is located on Robinson Crusoe Island, one of the Juan Fernandez Islands. On the map, Robinson Crusoe Island is located, marked by the red square. It is approximately 600 metres from the epicentre of the earthquake. Waveform and spectral data from the 3 hydrophones of HA3 North is shown on the left. The waveform plot shows the signal amplitude with time on the horizontal axis. The spectrogram shows the strength of the signal by colour coding, plotted from 0 to 100 Hz vertically, with the same time scale as the waveform axis, as the waveform plot. Looking at the signals, we see the earthquake itself is strongly recorded, a very large signal. The data stops at the 1.6 hour mark following the earthquake. The Chilean tsunami occurred in February 2010. A site survey to assess the tsunami damage at HA3 took place in August of the same year. In the left photo, Andrew Forbes is sitting on the base of the obliterated shore facility, with extensive damage to the community evident in the background. Unfortunately, 16 people lost their lives when the tsunami hit the island. The lower right photo shows the region where the shore facility previously stood. It was right down by the water, down around here. The new shore facility has been built on higher ground to mitigate tsunami risk. The upper right photo shows a rack of equipment from the shore facility. It is clearly totally unusable. It does not show up in the photos, but the underwater segment of the station was also made inoperable. The site survey revealed that repairs were not an option and the whole station needed to be replaced. The replacement of the underwater segment is a major manufacturing and logistical operation that is very expensive. This station, HA3 Robinson Crusoe Island, was successfully replaced in February 2014, 4 years after it was destroyed. I'll now move to an example of installation of a hydrophone station, HA4, at Crozet Islands, which was the last and most expensive hydrophone station to be installed. I will address various aspects of this installation over the next few slides. The left figure shows that this is an extremely remote location, a long way from anywhere. The station is to the south of the Indian Ocean, a region referred to as the Southern Ocean. The circumpolar winds make this a difficult place to work. On the right is a short video from a 2016 survey, some 10 months prior to installation. From the scale, we see that the shallow water is denoted by red, and the blue designates water of around 60 metres depth. This is a little video here. The actual landing point where the cable comes ashore is in the upper region. The ship Marian Dufresne 2 is shown by the red mark in the middle of the water. The bathymetry of this region was measured with a high horizontal resolution of 0.5 to 1 metre. This was achieved by a LiDAR survey from above the sea surface. Continuing with the installation of HA4 Crozet Islands, on the right there's a cartoon of the hydrophone triplet as a reminder. It is the same as previously shown. The figure on the left requires some explanation. Île de la Possession is the island that hosts the scientific base Port Alfred, and is hence the island on which the shore station is located. 2 cables run out of a bay on the east of the island. One heads north, one heads south. They run to the hydrophone triplets, which are designated by the 3 red dots. The scale at the top has divisions. The larger divisions are 10 kilometres horizontal distance, to give an idea of the scale of the operation. The cables and triplets are superimposed on the bathymetry, which comes from a side scan sonar of the Marian Dufresne 2, which provided horizontal resolution in shallow water of 1 metre and in deep water of 10 metres. The scale on the left provides grey levels of water depth. The hydrophones are floated off the sea floor to depths of 500 metres below the sea surface. Finally, the cables are armoured by the addition of spiraled wires. These are applied as part of the cable manufacturing process. See the 3 cable samples in the figure. Near the shore has the thickest armour, then a segment of medium armoured cable is used, and finally the lightest armoured cable is used in the deep water. I would now like to say some words on the installation of the hydrophone triplet. And for this we turn back to this cartoon. I will describe how it is deployed, since this is relevant to a number of items later in this presentation. The deployment of hydrophones proceeds in a linear manner. Each hydrophone is packaged into a load-bearing frame, which also contains its subsurface buoy, riser cable, etc. This hydrophone frame is lowered to the sea-floor as part of one continuous cable string. The ship moves on and lays the next one. So at this stage, all of this buoy, etc., is sitting on the sea-floor. Explosive bolts are now fired, releasing the buoys, which travel upward rapidly. There are corrosive bolts as a backup for the explosive bolts, which are fired by signal. The upward motion is limited by the length of the riser cable. Interestingly, the system is live through this process. Data from hydrophones is already being sent back to Vienna in real time. So what is seen is a very noisy signal as the hydrophone is rapidly dragged vertically through the water until the buoy has gone as far as it can. But the cable is a bit stretchy, so the hydrophone oscillates up and down. This appears on the data as a diminishing sine wave due to pressure changes as the hydrophone depth oscillates. A hydrophone, of course, is a device to measure pressure change. So as it moves up and down in the ocean, it's measuring this pressure change. We'll now watch now we have to turn to a video that's started from Vienna because this was not working well over the link. The next two slides of the installation of HA4 Crozet Islands. It largely speaks for itself. However, I will mention that the big orange balls are floats to raise the hydrophones to the optimum depth. The hydrophones themselves are relatively small. Now we will watch a real-time video. We start with an overhead view showing the cable shore landing area. The enclosed area is for storage, mainly during resupply operations. The small dots scattered over the land are penguins, while the larger blobs, mostly on the left of the dark sand, are elephant seals. This video was taken in December 2016 during the landing on shore of the south cable of the HA4 Crozet Island station. The cable was floated in from the ship using many small floats to keep it on the surface. The orange floats can be seen in the water. The cable is attached to a pre-prepared shore termination, which runs to a room with shore instrumentation. The cable, in this case, to be laid over 56 kilometres, is located on the ship. The ship is named the Decisive. It is a Reliance class cable ship. These ships are devoted to laying and repairing subsea cables. Segments of split pipe protection are applied to the cable and the floats removed so that the cable falls to the sea floor. The cast iron split pipe protection was added in the following manner. To an offshore section near the ship anchoring zone was installed from the ship. To a section near the beach, it was installed by divers. More on this shortly. Following this operation, the vessel moves along the planned cable route, rolling out the cable as it goes. One can see items in the water. There's a combination of seaweed and underwater reefs, underwater rocks. It's clear that there's not a wide path out. The island that one can see here is another one of the islands of the Crozet Islands. It's called East Island, and it lies to the east of Possession Island, the main island. There is a scientific base, Port Alfred, up the hill with around 30 residents. There are no other humans living on these islands. As you can see, there is a lack of trees on Crozet Island. There are around 2 million penguins of several species. The penguin colony at the landing beach are made up of king penguins. As well as the sea elephants, there are seals on the islands. And as the top predator, in the ocean, there are orcas. Okay, am I sharing again? Yes, okay, good. Just as well, sorry? Good to go. Yep. Okay, just as well I pre-recorded those because there was a problem in showing them tonight tonight my time, from where I am. On to the next slide. This figure shows the water depth, color-coded to represent depth, in the vicinity of the shore landing site. The narrow path from shore out past the anchor zone is clear. The anchor zone is where ships that are visiting Crozet anchor, and you don't want anchors snagging these cables. As mentioned previously, the cable, as manufactured, is armoured along its entire length. For this station, the first few kilometres of cable are extra strong, using double armour high abrasion resistant protection. The steel wires that armour the cable are extra thick, and in addition to providing the very high strength, also make the cable very heavy. To further protect the cable, these two lengths of split pipe were added in the most vulnerable locations. These were mentioned briefly in the previous slide, but here we can see where they were. The one length here, which were added by divers, another length here, which were added from the ship as the cable was lowered. This approach allowed the cables to be successfully landed within the short weather windows of opportunity that Crozet offers. I've given quite some emphasis to cable protection. This is because cable failure is a serious risk for cable life, and thus needs to be avoided if at all possible. As we know, the IMS has two types of hydroacoustic station, the hydrophone station and the T station. This slide illustrates the differences in performance observed between the two types of station. On the left of the figure, several of these differences are listed. Sampling rates. The hydrophone stations are sampled at a faster rate because there is useful information in the higher frequencies which propagate well through water, but not so well through ground. Inherently, T stations have some part of the signal path through the ground, and thus their high frequency performance is less than for hydrophone stations. Another difference between the two types of station is that hydrophone stations have much better signal to noise ratio than T stations. Considering IDC processing, the data from the hydrophone stations can be processed in a superior manner than from T stations. Some details are shown on the slide. Also, the directional information is more uncertain for T stations. The final point is that few of the H phases, that is, water path signals detected at hydrophone stations, are also detected at T stations. In the centre of the figure, an event, located at the red dot on the map, is detected at a hydrophone station, HA10 Ascension Island, and also at a T station, HA9, at Tristan da Cunha. In the waveform plot, the upper 5 traces are from the hydrophone station, and the lower 2 are from the T station. The high signal to noise ratio of the hydrophone station is readily apparent. The signals are shown as about the same size, but the background noise is much higher at the T stations. As with other IMS technologies, the hydroacoustic data has proved to be useful in a variety of civil and scientific applications. The most notable application is for provision of hydroacoustic data to tsunami warning centres. There have been 18 agreements with 17 countries for provision of such data. This assists with provision of timely warning of an approaching tsunami to a vulnerable population. There have been many studies of marine mammal vocalizations, calls and songs. Whale population numbers can be studied, as can whale migration. The whale calls from each species are distinctive, and even separate populations of one species can often be distinguished by their calls. There are a variety of noises generated by icebergs and ice sheets. These noises result from processes such as iceberg carving, ice cracking, or rubbing together of large blocks of ice. Underwater volcanoes are detected and can be monitored. This can have application both scientifically and for hazard prediction. Another application deals with changes in long-term ambient noise due to changes in shipping, changes in climate, and so on. Undersea soundscapes can be used to study such changes. I will show an interesting example of such an undersea soundscape shortly. Another application is to ocean acoustic thermometry. Changes in temperature of a whole ocean can be monitored by periodically measuring transmission time across a whole ocean. The last application I will touch on here is acoustic anomalies and possibilities of humanitarian assistance. Shortly, I will speak more about the search for Argentinian submarine ARA San Juan. This slide addresses classification of hydroacoustic phases in analysis at the International Data Centre. As part of IDC processing, each segment of noise above the background needs to be classified. For hydroacoustic stations, 3 possibilities are shown. H, an explosion in water. T, the signal has come from the ground, but coupled into the ocean for a significant part of its path. T, everything else. The noise example shown is from an airgun survey. Airguns are used for examining the structure of the seabed, often for oil exploration. Airguns make repetitive explosions by rapidly releasing compressed air. The signals are picked up by streamers of hydrophones of some kilometres length, which are towed behind a ship. This slide shows some examples of sounds from various hydroacoustic sources. In each case, there's a waveform at the top and a spectrogram at the bottom. The spectrograms show the energy content at frequencies from 100 hertz, from 0 hertz at the bottom to 100 hertz at the top. You can see from the various spectrograms and waveforms that different types of event have very different signals. I won't describe each in detail, but will comment that in the iceberg signal, strong harmonics are clearly evident. You can see them down here. Presumably these are due to vibration modes of the iceberg or ice sheet. I will note that there's still mysteries out there. See the example labelled unknown source. Actually, if anyone knows what that is, we would be pleased to know about it. A soundscape is a description of how the underwater world sounds, in the same way that a landscape is a description of how the Earth's surface looks. This soundscape shows how the strength of sound changes with frequency and time. The height and colours of the surface in the figure are set by the underwater noise levels. The carpet on the floor of the figure shows the same data flattened out, so that only the colour shading is left. This is done because some features in the data are clearer in the flat image, while others show up better on the surface. This particular soundscape shows the noise data measured at the IMS station, HO1, Cape Leeuwin, off the coast of Western Australia. Data is shown for the first 10 years of station operation, from 2002 to 2011, with the noise calculated for frequencies up to 100 hertz. Pardon me. There are peaks that occur regularly at 2 frequencies throughout the decade of recording. The microseismic peak at 0.3 hertz is due to nonlinear interaction between surface waves. It is largest in the austral, or southern hemisphere winter, when the southern Indian Ocean is at its roughest. This peak is also observed in infrasound stations and seismic stations. The peak centred around 20 hertz, caused by fin whales, which are present in the austral summer but absent in the winter. And you can see the periodicity here more clearly in the flat image. You can see it in the upper image, but it's clearer in the flat image. An example mentioned above under civil and scientific application was humanitarian assistance in emergency cases. This slide provides more detail regarding the search for the Argentinian submarine San Juan. The submarine went missing on November 15, 2017. Its last confirmed location was around 600 kilometres east of Argentina at this red dot. A hydroacoustic anomaly was recorded by CTBT Hydrophone Stations HA10 at Ascension Island and HA4 at Crozet Island, which are each 6,000 or 7,000 kilometres away, and the spectrograms show these acoustic anomalies. By analysing these anomalies, the CTBT was able to provide a location given by the intersection of the red lines in the figure. After an extended search operation on November 17, 2018, just over a year after the submarine went missing, the ARA San Juan was found on the seabed at approximately 900 metres depth. It was less than 20 kilometres from the location of the hydroacoustic anomaly provided by the CTBT. In 2017, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea announced their 6th nuclear explosion test. To the best of our knowledge, this is the first case where an underground nuclear test was detected by IMS hydrophone stations. Seismic P phases, where the energy travels predominantly through the Earth, were detected at several hydrophone stations. There was even a T phase detection on the Wake Island hydrophones. The path for this arrival is shown in the figure. The signal from the explosion travels through the ground under Japan and is converted to an in-water signal at the continental slope to the east of Japan and travels through the water from there to HA11 at Wake Island. For more detail, see the presentation at this conference listed on the screen. The data from IMS stations including the hydroacoustic stations, is made accessible for scientific and civilian applications. This is achieved through the CTBTO's VDEC, the Virtual Data Exploitation Centre. To apply and join the METI already using this resource, visit the website shown. There's a small advertisement for this great resource. The 6 hydrophone stations within the CTBTO's international monitoring system include a total of 11 hydrophone triplets. These triplets have a 20-year design life. With no scheduled maintenance of the underwater segment, they are based on a linear design which offers the advantage of high reliability and efficient deployment in one continuous operation. A disadvantage is that they are not suited to being repaired. However, a triplet employing modular components with wet mate connectors would have advantages. Replacement of a failed component in situ becomes possible without disturbing the remaining components or requiring a replacement of the entire triplet. For these reasons, a development is underway of a triplet using a modular design that maintains the efficient linear deployment of the existing non-modular system. The concept of a suitable modular design is described here very briefly. It maintains the advantage, as I said before, of the current non-modular linear design. It has all components associated with a hydrophone attached to a common frame. It is deployable in one continuous operation. Thus, initial deployment should be very similar to past deployments. The difference comes with repair because it uses wet mate connectors. Individual items can be removed and replaced. This operation would require a subsea remotely operated vehicle. However, it would be much cheaper than replacing the whole cable and triplet. For more information, see the e-poster at this conference as referenced in this slide. I'll take a moment to outline some current issues in the hydrophone stations of the network. Station HA8, Diego Garcia, was installed in the year 2000 with a design life of 20 years. It functioned without issue until March 2014 when it stopped sending data to the CTBTO. Tests using an optical time domain reflectometer showed a cable fault at 189 kilometres from the shore terminus at a location near a 600 metres high underwater ridge. Potentially, the cause of the fault is a submarine geohazard, such as a landslide. The south triplet continues to function well despite its 21 years of age. See the e-poster for more details. One hydrophone of the south HA10 triplet, Ascension Island, is malfunctioning. This was exhibiting crosstalk to the other two hydrophones of the triplet. This hydrophone has been taken out of operation to avoid its high level of electronic noise impacting IDC processing. Separately, there's persisting noise in one hydrophone of the North HA3 triplet. This noise is likely of electronic origin, but it is not so bad to need to be taken out of operations. A near-shore cable inspection survey is currently being procured for HA3 at Robinson Crusoe Island. A length of cable is at risk from anchor damage. It has been observed that there has been some damage to the split pipe, and there's a plan for repair of that. Again, see the e-poster. I'm on my second last slide. The CTBTO IMS hydroacoustic system makes a unique global observatory, a unique resource providing data 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, year in and year out. The data is collected with extremely high data availability. The data is stored in perpetuity with careful attention to its preservation and availability. The data is high quality with GPS synchronization of the acoustic data. However, there are challenges. Any failure in the underwater segment of the hydrophone stations cannot be easily repaired. The installation or repair of a hydrophone station is much more expensive than for any other station of the IMS. Hence, effort is being expended on making these stations more sustainable. Nonetheless, it is certain that expensive repair will be required at unpredictable intervals. Budgeting for such eventualities poses challenges due to the combination of high cost and unpredictable timing. The sparse nature of the network means that station outages have larger impact. The final slide addresses the value of the CTBTO Hydroacoustic Network. The value of the hydroacoustic network for CTBT monitoring purposes is, of course, the reason for its existence and continuing operation. It provides excellent data for events in or near the ocean, assisting in the location and discrimination of events. Synergy with the other IMS technologies provides a large barrier confronting any unannounced nuclear explosion tests. Currently, it is the only CTBT IMS technology which has completed and certified all stations listed in the CTBT. The value of the hydroacoustic network for civil applications is clear. I will touch on one example. Tsunamis happen and cause considerable loss of life. With adequate warning, the death toll can be reduced. Tsunami warning centres have been established. They use data from many sources, including from the IMS hydroacoustic network. The value of the hydroacoustic network for scientific studies is considerable. I will touch on a few examples. Earth processes can be studied, such as rupture progression during an earthquake. Studies of the 2004 Indian Ocean earthquake used IMS hydrophone stations to track the path of the rupture that caused a very large Tsunami. Marine mammal vocalizations can be used to determine and track populations of marine mammals. In the last few weeks, there has been a report of the discovery, using IMS hydroacoustic stations, of a new population of pygmy blue whales in the Indian Ocean. Icebergs can be studied through the noises generated during processes such as cracking and colliding. However, it is important to focus back on the first value listed. This network provides a very valuable capability for CTBT monitoring. I thank you for your attention.
Martin, thank you very much for this comprehensive, fascinating presentation. We have a few minutes and we would like to communicate a couple of questions that we have from our viewers, along with the compliments for a very interesting, fascinating presentation. So one question is related to the hydrophone buoys that they were contemplating at the beginning of the CTBT. You mentioned that the hydrophone buoy solution only permitted certain characteristics or features of the signal to be transmitted with delay. So the question is, if you recall, whether there were any on-buoy processing planned at the time.
Yes, it was planned to process the waveform data, detect events, and send characteristics of those events. The reason for this was the energy requirements and data capabilities of the transmission from the buoys. This was 25 years ago. I'm sure technology has moved on and these capabilities are stronger now. But at that time, sending of waveform data could not be considered. So yes, onboard processing and sending of the predetermined of characteristics that you decided you wanted to know about from each event.
All right, thank you very much. And signal processing may have improved since then, but the problems with sustainability, design life, vandalism, and all these issues remain. So this option wisely was not chosen at the time. There's another question. If you would like to have your thoughts about perhaps emerging new technologies that will allow a denser network at comparable cost. We have to keep in mind, though, that the number of stations allowed by the treaty is fixed.
Yeah, this is difficult. It's inherently expensive to put stations down on the bottom of the ocean, and there are more networks being put out in the world with things like ocean bottom seismometers and so on, and one could imagine piggybacking on such things to have hydrophones in other locations with sharing of cost. That runs into some problem with the fact that the treaty specifies where the station should be and so on. So at some stage, it may be thought that the treaty has been around for long enough that a bunch of these basic decisions on how to do the monitoring could be revisited. But this is a not just a technical issue. This is more a political issue than a technical issue, and I certainly can't talk to the likelihood of such a thing happening.
All right, thank you very much. And as we're approaching to the conclusion of this discussion, I would like to ask you, In all this experience that we have here with the CTBT and the Hydroacoustic Network, what would you think is the highest and the lowest point of your career?
I think that the installation of these hydrophone stations, every one of them, I see as a high point, but possibly the one at Cape Lewin in Australia, because I come from Australia, and I was heavily involved with making this happen. I was involved in a whole bunch of them. My lowest point would have been I was there on an earlier attempt to install the station at Crozet Island, and we had some terrible problems with bad weather and with issues where things were not going right. And the 3 weeks we had planned for the installation turned into 7 weeks. And so we were on the Crozet Island and out there in the ocean, rocking and rolling to a serious degree for 7 weeks. And I think as I was rocking and rolling in a gale of 180 kilometers an hour, that was when I went to the bridge to read the anemometer, and I only did that when it didn't seem so bad. I think that maybe that was my lowest point.
Thank you very much for this wonderful presentation and discussion. We come to the end of this session. We look forward to engage with you soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Georgios, and thank you all for paying attention.